PT, I want to talk to you about your SBC trip, the Southern Baptist Convention trip. And we have a live audience with us today. Okay, it's not live, it's a virtual live audience, and they're going to be sending me questions to ask you. But why don't we start with that? Can you just tell us what this SBC trip was about? What is the Southern Baptist Convention? Why are we affiliated with it? Yeah, give me the rundown.
All right, sounds good. Yeah, it was definitely a very adventurous week. So what the SBC is we are a collective of churches that belong to a denomination, but because every church is autonomous in that they manage their own affairs and make their own decisions, when we get together, it's actually to be able to make decisions together on behalf of our collective. And the reason why we choose to partner together or cooperate together and give and serve together is because we want to send out missionaries, it's because we want to support our educational institutions, it's because we want to support church planting and disciple making locally, regionally, nationally. And so we get together with the money that we give towards cooperative program and we make decisions and we elect our leaders. And this happens once a year in the month of June.
So it's a group of churches specifically identifying as Baptist, Southern Baptist, and we get together with them to make decisions as a group. That means that there is like a president. That means there is like a board of directors in charge of this SBC group.
Yes, and so we elect the president, we elect a lot of different officers, and then who carries out these decisions is this executive committee, and we elect leaders for that too, in terms of how they are chosen and so on and so forth. The people that would appoint these people and would hire these people, we also help to call them as well.
And you said that we give money to the SBC. Can you explain that a little bit more?
Yeah, every single year we have two major offerings as part of SBC Walnut. So we have Annie Armstrong, and this is around Christmas time, but then we also have Lottie Moon, or maybe it's the other way around, Lottie Moon, Christmas, Annie Armstrong, Easter. And so all that money goes to the cooperative program, and the cooperative program is what gets pulled together, then redistributed to all the various entities and all the various organizations and ministries in states, nationally, around the world to do that work.
I see. And I am familiar with those special offerings. When people give offerings, they direct money specifically to there. So when we give general offering, like general offering doesn't really go there, right? Like it's specific for those things. Okay, well, PT, thanks for clarifying that for me. I feel like I know a little bit more about the SBC with that. We have a question. How do Asians or Asian Americans fit into this vision or mission of the SBC? Can you show how our church specifically fits into this as an Asian American church?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And that's actually the angle that I've been thinking about a lot of this, even as a messenger on behalf of our church, which is what I was officially sent as. So because we give, we're allowed to send a certain number of messengers, and I was the representative this year, even though we could have taken it up to 12. But in terms of where Asian American churches are at now, which we would fall under, there's a lot more of what is actually happening to both highlight what God is doing in Asian American churches, but then also what Asian American churches themselves are doing. So there's stats that show that in the last 10 years, if you're looking at all the churches that have been planted, the majority of them are non-Anglo churches, which are the opposite of SBC as it has been, which is primarily Anglo. But most of the church plants have been non-Anglo. And then out of that, a good 40% of those are actually Asian churches. And so in terms of the population of Asian churches in the SBC, we probably reflect the national population average, about 5% is Asian. But if you're looking at the activity that's happening and the people that give, a lot of it is actually us, the Asian American churches. And so one of the things that I got the privilege of being able to be a part of this year and work on was to be a part of a core team of this Asian American collective that's actually connected to the executive committee. And so the executive committee has appointed somebody to oversee Asian American churches and to network and to bring us together and to be able to equip and support the pastors in these churches. And so we actually use this annual meeting to get a lot of things off the ground and to connect and network with pastors nationwide to bring together the other Asian ethnicities too, Southeast Asian and so on and so forth, all of the different churches that we have, the Filipinos, along with the East Asians. And we're saying, guys, we need to know each other. We need to build relationships. And more importantly, look ahead to 2022 when the annual meeting actually comes out west to Anaheim. And people are going to come for one reason or another, but for Disneyland probably, but one reason or another, they're going to come, and we get to actually welcome them and welcome in particular Asian American pastors to Anaheim to be able to continue the work that God has been doing.
So if I'm gonna, okay, correct me if I'm wrong, it sounds like Asian American churches fit into the vision of the SBC. I mean, it's not necessarily like, do we fit there? It's more like a representation sort of thing, more of a reflection of Southern Baptists. So we want to like kind of represent there. Am I correct in saying those things?
Well, I think we definitely want to represent. So that I agree with you in that that's one of the reasons. So we give the Asian American churches, especially in California, we give generously, and that's not a bad thing. That's a great thing.
Mhm.
But if we just give and we don't get involved and we don't participate in the decision making and the leadership and so on and so forth, then it's to me it's kind of taking for granted this stewardship that we have. And so because we give and we give generously, and people nationally and even in the state, they recognize that out of Asian American churches, this is kind of an opportunity for us to have. But then also the purpose of the SBC is not so much a top-down organization, but it's a bottom-up cooperation to make disciples. And if we want to make disciples, well, guess what? The Asian American churches, we want to be engaged in this too, and we want to be supported nationally, and we want to have the opportunities and the platform to be able to use the resources that are in the SBC so that we could pursue the families and the communities for which God has placed our churches. And one of the things that I've really come to see, especially the last few years in participating in the annual meeting, is the SBC is truly a wealth of resources. And I don't mean that just financially. I mean the educational arm, the policies, in terms of the training that comes out, the leadership, the think tank, the theology, and the ways by which it's impacting culture and how it's shaping the churches across the land and in the world. The SBC is a wonderful resource to tap into, but a lot of times we don't even know how we can make the most out of our identification and belonging in the SBC. So this is kind of our church's way to get more involved, but then along the process, we're also bringing a lot of churches along with us to be able to do this.
I see. So it sounds like there's also networking opportunities and using of resources that the SBC provides us as a church that's affiliated with it.
Yeah.
Another question, can you share if or how FCBC Walnut voted during the SBC? Now, I'm familiar sort of with voting that goes on there. And I guess this year there are a lot of things to vote on, I think. There's sort of not a ruckus, but I guess there's some excitement going on. Can you explain that?
Yeah, you know what? That's still playing out right now because Ed Litton, who became the president of SBC, he's kind of going through some stuff right now, and it's understandable what is happening here. But yeah, there was a lot of messengers that went to this year. In fact, people were bussed in from all over the place, and it's because of the presidential election. And it's kind of pitting certain factions within the SBC. And it's not that people were against each other fundamentally, but probably the vision that they had for the direction that they wanted the SBC to go. There were certainly two major factions. I think one was open, to engage on particular issues, much more of issues that are important, like sexual abuse, like women in ministry, racial reconciliation. There was more of an openness to that. And then another that maybe thought that the SBC in the direction that's going in under JD Greer maybe has become more liberal, and that's their point of view. So then they kind of wanted to be able to clamp things down and to be able to put people in office that weren't pushing for bad things, but maybe it was shutting down some conversation with these topics, and to be able to just focus on what they thought was a more pure way of being Southern Baptist. And so there were strong candidates that came in, and the person that won, actually, honestly, it was probably a little bit of a surprise to me, because he came out strong even in the first round. So a little bit behind the scenes, I got to serve in a way that I've never done before. I served as a teller this year as well. So a teller is where you're counting the paper ballots. And so if you can imagine how big of a turnout this was election-wise, being a teller was actually a pretty intense thing. We were kind of put in a back room, and then we would wait, and then we would see the buckets of paper ballots come in, and then it was go time. And so it was really highly participated. There was a lot of just excitement over this, and then there were people that were really excited and joyful over the results, and there were people that were really upset, and you could kind of see a lot of that kind of playing itself out even while we were there. And so yeah, the presidential election was huge, and the person that Juan took 2 rounds at Lytton out of the 4 candidates. Out of the first round, it was Mike Stone, Etlin, and they probably represent the two factions fairly well. Al Mohler came into a surprising 3rd and didn't make the runoff. And the last guy was just somebody that was, much more targeted in specific things and was not well known. But it was an exciting election. And then I think how it went down to the first vice president, second vice president, it was all people were very invested in it.
Now, the president of the SBC is going to, I guess, set the direction, set the tone for how it runs, I guess. Is that what like the president's role is? That's why it's so important.
They set the direction in the sense of who they appoint for certain key positions. So that's where the influence comes. So the president is going to appoint people in the certain committees and the certain entities that are going to go in a particular direction to support his vision for the SBC. But then on a more broad level, national level, I mean, a lot of times, we kind of see it as we're looking within our tribe and we're like, okay, this is what we do. But from the outside, more broadly, people are like, oh, SBC, they're the largest, Protestant denomination. So this guy's the head of it. So he kind of becomes a figurehead too for the SBC. So in terms of the persona that he carries and the message that he has and the platform that he gets, even though he can't make a lot of changes personally, it's always going to be through the people he appoints and the kind of the direction that he wants to persuade. But at the end, he becomes the person that represents us on a more, broad platform. And so there's influence that comes from that as well.
And you said that there's still something going on right now in terms of who they're figuring out who the president's going to be.
Well, the president has been selected. That's Ed Litton. But then since then, he's gotten himself into a little bit of a scandal with plagiarism. So that's hitting up some of the headlines. There were just video comparisons of his sermons and J.D. Greer's sermons, and J.D. Greer was the previous president. Apparently, there was a personal arrangement, but he didn't give credit for using a lot of J.D. Greer stuff, and it is more than you probably should. There's a lot of similar passages, mannerisms, illustrations. But I mean, he's doing it with a clear conscience, apparently. Both men agree, but the optics don't look great right now. So I feel like we're still in the middle of trying to figure that out, and we're just kind of watching how it plays out.
Yeah, it's sort of muddy right now.
Yeah.
We're going to have to save that for another conversation about plagiarism and reusing sermons and that sort of thing. That'll be for another one. We have another question here. Can you share how FCBC Walnut determines how much to give to the SBC versus FCBC Walnut missionaries or personnel?
Yeah, so how we choose to give is something that's kind of been handed down to us, at least from a starting point. So the philosophy that we give is very similar to how FCBCLA gives as well, as we pretty much tithe what we receive towards the cooperative program. Now that can come in various smaller sections of it, but in terms of broadly, we give in that way. And that's how we support, that's how we, but then, that's the reason why, even talking within the pastoral staff, when we saw that there were potentially issues with the SBC, we're like, well, there's nothing wrong with generously giving, but I think we need to be a part of the solution. Like, we need to be involved in a dialogue. We need to be able to get ourselves in there in positions where we can actually participate and possibly even influence, or at least we're not ignorant and we're just kind of throwing money in this direction. Because in the second generation of leadership in our church, if we don't prioritize the SBC as being something that reflects our vision and how we want to give, then that just may end or, just lower or drop significantly later. And I think the point is to build something going forward and not just give and then not know why and then have it be something that just dries up. So we're kind of in the process now of learning a lot more, and like I said, tapping into the resources that SBC has to offer. But we're kind of in a unique time because even I've noticed a difference from the last few years to even now. There's just an openness to broadening the SBC, to inviting the ethnic churches in, and to kind of bring second generation and younger pastors into the conversation and into the leadership. And so God is certainly doing some things from what I've been able to see so far.
Yeah, I guess if we have more questions about tithing and stuff, or how finances go with our church, we can get into that at another time. But just to clarify, we have the 2 special offerings, the Annie Armstrong one, and what was the other one that we said? The
Lottie Moon.
Lottie Moon. And then you said we have like a just general tithe that goes to SBC. Is that correct?
I believe so.
Okay. All right. We can figure that out if it's not the case.
Right.
But man, well, PT, thank you for taking the time to clarify these things for me. The SBC is a big entity. There's sort of a lot of stuff that goes on, and like you said, behind the scenes. And so I appreciate you for trying to share with us how it works. I know that there's just a lot of stuff that I think you're figuring out too as you go closer and get into I guess different positions there. But yeah, man, thanks for the time. And I don't see any more questions. Thanks, man. I think this is a good place to end it. We'll talk again soon.
Sounds great. Thanks.
Thanks.